Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today it is finally time for us to review Portal Companion Collection on the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the stupendous test subject Ollie Reynolds, and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things. When it was announced that Portal and Portal 2 would be making their way to the Nintendo Switch as part of the Portal Companion Collection, fans collectively choked on their cakes. Two of the best puzzle games of all time on the go, you say? Yes, please! Naturally, when certain games get ported to Nintendo's hybrid system, there's an accompanying fear that they might not run quite as well on what is effectively a handheld device. Perhaps the frame rate takes a hit, or maybe the visuals aren't up to scratch. Is this the case for the Portal pair? Not even a bit. What are you talking about? The first Portal launched in 2007 as part of a compilation known as the Orange Box. Despite some criticisms aimed at its short length and limited narrative, the general consensus was that it stood out as one of the most original, unique games ever created, and that's still the same case to this very day. While the Switch has seen a number of games take inspiration from Valve's classic, including Cube 2, Chromagun, and the criminally overlooked Superliminal, Portal is finally available to show the rest of the pack that it's still king of the first-person puzzlers. For the 3 people out there who might not be in the know, Portal takes place within the Aperture Science Enrichment Center, in which you need to progress through a series of chambers. These might simply require you to move from point A to point B, or you may need to trigger some switches to open doorways, but the key factor is in its use of the Aperture Science handheld portal device, or simply the portal gun. By using the gun to shoot out 2 differently colored portals, one map to each trigger, you're able to effectively teleport yourself from one end of the room to the other by walking through one or the other one. Not only that, but the game eventually makes use of movement and momentum to allow the player to accomplish absurd feats of traversal. Essentially, by jumping down towards a portal below you, the effect of gravity allows you to build momentum and fling yourself out of the other portal in whichever direction it's pointing, propelling yourself over gaps and reaching areas that would otherwise be impossible to get to. In other words, speedy thing goes in, speedy thing comes out. It might sound complex, but Portal's pacing is absolutely masterful. The way it teaches you how to accomplish certain tasks without actually telling you is absolutely remarkable, and it makes you feel like a bona fide genius when you eventually work it out for yourself. Valve could have left it at that and been done with it. We'd still be left with one of the best puzzle games ever created. But what elevates Portal even further is the incredible writing. Right from the very start of the game, your character is accompanied by the voice of GLaDOS, an AI personality core who oversees the testing procedures within Aperture Science. Expertly voiced by Ellen McLean, GLaDOS's constant berating of the protagonist is a source of endless humor, and it's no surprise that the gaming community holds the character in such high regard even to this day. The sequel, Portal 2, is pretty much more of the same, but it bulks the experience up considerably with new mechanics like the paint-like propulsion gel and laser guiding. The narrative is also a lot more satisfying, if a little bit more obvious, introducing Stephen Merchant as the charming and ever so slightly creepy personality core Wheatley, and J.K. Simmons as Aperture's founder, Cave Johnson, alongside the returning McLean.
Does any of this make any sense? Just tell me, just say yes. Okay, what you're doing there is jumping. You just jumped.
The game takes place hundreds of years after the first, or at least we think so. The game makes it intentionally vague, with the Enrichment Center in total disrepair, making the task of traversing around the rooms much more complicated, but also introducing some truly beautiful visuals in the process. Overall, having released as a standalone experience back in 2011, Portal 2 feels more like a complete package with more weight behind its presentation. Not only that, but Portal 2 also offers up a co-op mode that's compatible with split screen, local, and online multiplayer. Valve went the extra mile here as well, introducing 2 unique characters specifically for co-op play with a completely fresh narrative to boot. It's not as involved as the main campaign by any stretch, but if you've got a friend that you're able to link up with, it's well worth playing. If you're playing via split screen, the game also lets you choose whether to orientate the split horizontally or correctly, which is a nice little touch. With all that said, how do the games actually run on Switch? Well, in terms of resolution, you are looking at a full 1080p during dock mode and 720p in handheld mode. The great thing here, though, is that you're going to experience buttery smooth 60 frames per second gameplay with both options, with only minor dips in the frame rate during particularly intensive moments, like when you create somewhat of an endless loop with your portals. Given the vintage of these games, you may expect them to function well on Switch, but as we've seen with other ports, solid performance is by no means guaranteed with decade-old titles. And when you consider the original console releases ran at 720p at 30 frames a second on what is arguably weaker but not by a lot hardware, Nvidia Lightspeed Studios have done a fantastic job here. The only downside on Switch is that you're going to experience loading screens when moving between each test chamber. These don't last particularly long, but they're frequent enough to be noticeable. Another minor nitpick is that the game loses its connection to the internet if you put the Switch in sleep mode, bringing up an annoying error message between each chamber when you boot it back up, but I mean, hopefully that can just be patched out at a later date. The biggest gameplay surprise, however, is that the Switch version offers full motion support for aiming. You can tinker with this to your heart's content as well, including the overall sensitivity, inverting the Y-axis, and even choosing which of the Joy-Con utilizes the motion controls should you wish to play in docked mode. Other touches like button remapping and scaling text between screen modes makes this version even more approachable. It's hard to overstate our satisfaction with Portal Companion Collection. There you go, you can have that one for free. Portal and Portal 2 felt incredibly fresh when they first released, and the years since have not diminished their immense impact. To now have two of the most unique and mind-bending puzzles on the Nintendo console, and on the go if you choose, is a pure joy. If it weren't for the frequent loading screens punctuating the experience, we would have absolutely nothing to complain about here. The motion controls work like a dream, the games run at near rock-solid 60 frames per second, and the writing remains as funny now as it did all those years ago. If you haven't played the Portal games before, this should be a no-brainer. And if you have, well, just play them again. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and oh lordy. I picked up the orange box on a whim back when it first released. God knows what space year that was. And I remember playing Portal completely unaware of what the game was like about at all. I just saw, oh, what's Portal? Picked it up and, you know, all that. And I played it all through a single sitting in the dark with no one else in the house. And it's an experience I'm never going to forget. And whilst playing it for a second, well, this would probably be like my 8th time playing the game. It's not going to be the same as the first time you play it, but my god, it is still an incredible time. I absolutely adore this. Portal 2 as well, I can't get over it. It's amazing that they were able to take Portal, which was absolutely seminal at the time, and really, I mean, arguably the puzzles are maybe a little bit more sort of, I don't know, maybe it's just the fact that it's a sequel. It didn't have exactly the same impact in terms of the puzzles, but the narrative and the voice acting and just the overall experience and the visuals and everything is just second to none. It's amazing that they were able to borderline improve on nearly everything, except maybe the puzzles, but maybe that's just me. Still think the puzzles are very good. I genuinely can't sing the praises of these games enough. They are fantastic. And frankly, it's available for an absolute song. Like, I heard that it was announced and everything. I was off at the time, and I thought, okay, I think I'm going to buy that. I think I'm going to buy that, you know, on a whim. You know, I love these games, and, you know, it's worth it to buy it again. And I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, like 20, 25 quid, and I would have been absolutely, you know, very happy with that. But instead it was like, what, like £13.50 or something stupid like that. These are two of like the best games ever made, and you can get them for that price. It's ridiculous, and they've been ported beautifully. Can you tell that I like these games? It's not original or a hot take to say that these games are fantastic, but who cares? I don't care. These games are fantastic. There's a reason everyone harps on about them. If you want to harp on about them as well, I thoroughly suggest you get this game. The load screens are a bit of a pain in the arse, I'm not going to lie. Although I think on an initial playthrough, if you're not familiar with the puzzles, like I was, it's going to be less of a nuisance because they'll come up less frequently. But when you're really charging through different test chambers and stuff like that, and you know exactly what to do, and you do shortcuts and stuff like that, it does kind of feel like you're getting as much gameplay as loading screens occasionally. I mean, that's a slight exaggeration, but they are annoying. Can't escape that. They were annoying back on the 360. They're annoying here. That was a big thing for a long time as well. I remember there being this huge debacle about loading screens, and like every game had these loading screens and they were massive, and I think it's because they were pushing the systems too far. That's slightly off topic. Also, Wheatley lives in my head rent-free. Like, don't get me wrong, J.K. Simmons is a fantastic addition, but Wheatley absolutely steals the show for me. Just get these games. They're not just a good, they're a good.